Okay, well, thanks everybody for being here. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. I do need a motion to go into special session.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of going into special session, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. We are now in special session. Up for consideration is the approval of the AFY15 1540 Memorandum of Agreement, and I think the City Administrator just wants to make a note about the motion.
Yes, if I could, the last sentence of the blue sheet in the motion, where it talks about the projected cost of the wage enhancements, you can scratch out to the general fund. The 227,000 figure represents all funds.
Is your microphone on?
So in the last sentence of the motion, the blue sheet, where it talks about the projected cost of the wage enhancements, if you would scratch out the phrase "to the general fund," because the 227,953 cost figure applies to all funds. So I think the motion could just read the projected cost of the wage enhancements is 227,953.95. If you want to say which includes all funds, because in the case of 1540, we have employees in the general fund, we have employees in water, wastewater, non-general funds. So that's just a correction to the wording there. The number's right, just delete "to the general fund." Make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
So we will entertain that motion at this time.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for Mayor and Council approval of a memorandum of agreement between the City of Hagerstown and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Council 67, AFL-CIO, Local Union 1540. This agreement satisfies the wage and benefit reopener provision in the current collective bargaining agreement, which expires on June 30, 2016. The terms of the agreement are outlined in the attached agreement. The projected cost of the wage enhancements, with Mr. Zimmerman's amendment, are $227,953.95 in fiscal 15 and $255,645.60 in fiscal 16.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Munson and seconded by Mr. Metzner. Any discussion? I just want to say thank you to staff and to the employees who continually work together to try to achieve this agreement.
Absolutely.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The ayes have it, and the agreement is agreed to. Thanks, everybody. We're going to have a signing ceremony. So the clerk has laid out the document over here on her table. If you all don't mind taking a moment to come sign.
And
Mr. Kearns
is here.
George Kearns is here representing the City of Hagerstown 1540.
If it's easier for you all to pass it around, that's fine. I just
Okay. George, thanks for being here. See you every morning out there. I don't write that many. That's neat. An auto pen. You're going to take him to pen.
Are those the peace representatives there?
Photo bomb or photo.
The what?
Are we? Aaron would like a group photo with us and Mr. Kearns. Marty, don't get comfortable. Might as well just come over here and sign them, Penny.
Yeah, might as well. I just can give it the whole way around, okay?
Of course. We'll just do it right here, though. Is that fine? Do you want to do it? All right. Let's gather. Come on over, Marty and George, Kristen. No, we're going to do a group photo. I heard you wanted to make a speech. Is that right? No. I'm just teasing.
I'm nervous enough.
I'm just teasing.
Do you want to go to the top step?
Top step.
Where shall I do? Hey, George,
Right, you're good where you are on the top
that's
step.
part of the responsibility of union,
Step up one more.
union presidents. You got to give a speech.
One more step.
Sure. What's up?
Right behind you.
All right, Aaron.
No.
Short person.
Penny,
Short person.
Yes.
first row on the end.
Put you in.
Councilman Munson.
Want to get Karen and Karen and
Down here.
get Karen and Scott up there.
Karen and Scott. All right. Blue one and blue.
Okay.
Feel free to come up in here.
I try to get them there.
Mr. Alshire right here.
Take one step to the left. All right. Then take one step to the right.
Right here. Karen, you can go in the end.
Okay.
Scott over.
I'm gonna step away. I'm a cussing down guy. I'm gonna step away.
Everyone here on three. Ready?
Going on over there. I'm
Two,
standing on this
three.
side.
Another one. One, two, three. One more for good measure.
Whatever they call it.
One, two, three. Thank you.
Talking about their boldness. Yeah.
Well, you got a class B there. Class C maybe. You got a class A, you can match them.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
George, thanks. Yeah, thanks, George.
Do we have the Blues Fest artists?
No, well, Karen said I'll email it.
Oh,
I'm not seeing anybody.
right.
Rob is supposed to be here at 5:10.
Okay.
Rob Haverman.
Okay.
No,
They're here. The proclamation for Lupus. And her name is Debbie Nicholson. Okay, well, a couple of changes to the agenda. The Blues Fest visual artist could not make it today, so we're going to put that on for another time. We have some representatives for Bike for Peace, and I don't see those folks here yet, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll wait for them, but it's an interesting group of folks who are coming through town. So at this time, we would like to, and we also had the recognition for the Barbara Ingram School for the Arts. The principal, Rob Havermail, is going to be here. But since he's not here, we're going to proceed to the next item, which is a proclamation for Lupus Awareness Month. And at this time, I'd like to invite Debbie Nicholson up, who will be accepting that proclamation.
We're here.
All right. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. We appreciate this, Mr. Mayor.
Indeed. And what's your name?
Evangeline Nicholson. This is my daughter. She
Evangeline.
also has lupus.
Very nice
So
to
we
meet you.
appreciate
Well,
it.
thank you for being here. So this is a proclamation for Lupus Awareness Month, May 2014. Whereas lupus is an unpredictable and misunderstood autoimmune disease that ravages different parts of the body, it is difficult to diagnose, hard to live with, and a challenge to treat. And whereas lupus can affect any part of the body, including skin, lungs, heart, kidney, and brain, it can also cause seizures, strokes, heart attacks, miscarriages, and organ failure. And whereas lupus can be particularly difficult to diagnose because its symptoms are similar to those of many other illnesses, more than half of all people with lupus take 4 or more years and visit 3 or more doctors before obtaining a diagnosis. And whereas early diagnosis and proper treatments are critical to the improvement of the quality of life and survival rate of people with lupus. And whereas increased public awareness, education, and research are key to winning the battle against lupus, now therefore, with the support of the City Council, I, David Geisberts, the Mayor of the City of Hagerstown, do hereby proclaim May 2014 to be Lupus Awareness Month and encourage citizens to observe this month by educating themselves on the symptoms and impact of lupus. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you very much for doing this.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can I take a selfie with you?
Sure you can, but before you do that, would you like to talk about what kind of work you're doing in the community to raise awareness?
I'd be happy to. She brought awareness ribbons for each of you. The color of lupus is purple.
To bring it up.
Can you go get them real quick and pass those out? I was diagnosed with lupus myself when I was 23, and it took 10 years to get diagnosed. And we're just wanting more awareness because we feel that awareness brings funding, and funding will bring a cure. So hopefully one day that's our ultimate goal, is to have a cure. And the basis and the start of that is awareness. So thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. We appreciate you doing this for us. It's so important to get word out that lupus is a devastating disease. And as the proclamation says, it is hard to live with. I just started 3 years ago taking an experimental drug, and it's the first drug for lupus. It's a chemotherapy type of drug. I go for an infusion once a month. And in 50 years, this is the first drug that we've had. So there are new drugs and things on the horizon, so hopefully with more awareness we can get funding.
Indeed.
So thank you so much.
Thank you. And maybe Mom can pass out the ribbons while we take a selfie. How's that sound?
I'm such a teenager.
That's all right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. Oh, here. Don't forget to take that with you.
Thank you.
Sure, a regular photo? Absolutely. Yeah, you can hold up the,
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Where do you go to school?
I'm homeschooled and I graduated.
Oh, very nice. We'll get one with Mom.
Come on, Mommy.
One, two, three. One more. One, two, three. Great.
All right, thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Here's your phone.
Thank you.
I knew you wouldn't walk away from the table without it, but just in case. Yes. So I understand we have our BISFA folks here. So Mr. Havermel, would you like to come up and share the good news about Barbara Ingram School for the Arts? Actually, I'd like to present you with this special recognition certificate. So after that, then you can share the news. How's that sound? Who is this?
I'm Julia.
Hi, Julia.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for inviting us.
So this is a certificate of special recognition for the Barbara Ingram School for the Arts. Whereas the Barbara Ingram School for the Arts, or BISFA, opened its doors in 2009 and offers classes for students in grades 9 through 12. And whereas BISFA's mission and vision is to provide every student with a rigorous, comprehensive college preparatory curriculum rooted in intense pre-professional training in the arts that encourages excellence and success in their personal development as students, artists, and cultural leaders. And whereas U.S. News and World Report is an American news magazine which focuses on political, economic, health, and education stories and is well known for its ranking of academic institutions. And whereas this year the U.S. News and World Report reviewed 31,242 United States public high schools. Of this number, 48 Maryland schools made their list, with Barbara Ingram School for the Fine Arts being ranked, Barbara Ingram School for the Arts being ranked number 5 in the state of Maryland. BISFA nationally ranked number 171. And whereas the city of Hagerstown is proud to have Barbara Ingram School for the Arts recognized as one of the best high schools in the state of Maryland and is honored to have them located in the heart of our wonderful city, now therefore I, David Geisberts, the mayor of the city of Hagerstown, do hereby congratulate and recognize Barbara Ingram School for the Arts on this special accomplishment and recognition. So congratulations, all of the Barbara Ingram schools. I know you're here representing all of your classmates. And you're a senior, is that right?
I am a senior.
where are you attending school next year?
University of South Carolina.
Very nice, very nice. And Mr. Havermill, would you like to talk about some of the accomplishments of your students?
This is just an honor, and I just want to say, I mean, I'd love to take credit for this, but this school is built on people, the students, the teachers, the staff, and this great downtown. And I tell you, everybody works together because it is a complete team effort, and we really appreciate this because this kind of just also helps us show the hard work that the teachers and the students have been doing.
Well, thank you so much. We wish you much continued success.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Could we make a comment?
Please.
Congratulations. I think the amazing thing about the awards you've received so far from U.S. News and World Report is all those other schools took many years getting where you've gotten in just a couple of years, and I think that's incredible.
It's a good point.
And it's great to read such positive things about Hagerstown.
And it's great to see such talented students.
Absolutely.
Well, and I'd invite anybody to come down. Anytime you want to come down, just visit through.
Come hang out with us.
Yeah. The kids will be completely honest with you. You can ask them anything, and they will tell you the honest truth. So stop down anytime.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work. Absolutely.
One take wonders.
Okay. That's what
Hey,
we
Rob,
like to hear.
contrary to your modesty, we hear nothing but good things about what you are doing as a principal of the school. So whatever it is, just keep it up for the next 25 or 30 years.
Thank you.
All right. Still don't see any representatives for Bike for Peace. So at this time, we're going to invite the Chief of Police to come up and talk about take-home vehicles for search management team and crisis negotiators. Chief?
It's got breaking news.
So you have breaking news?
Good evening.
Hello.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
We're here to talk to council about expanding our take-home car program to two groups of individuals that carry extra duties within our department. One are the search managers, which is new to our department. It's a joint effort that we have with the Sheriff's Department and other area law enforcement agencies in Washington County. We came together to look for missing children, missing adults. It's a very complex thing. It sounds kind of simple to do, go out and kind of look around and see where you find them, but it's actually a pretty skilled profession to be a search manager. There's training that goes along with it and a systematic approach that they take that's been scientifically proven to help find lost people. The sheriff's had some great successes earlier this year. You've seen some of those in the paper. The child that was spent the night in the woods over by the community college, and some other ones that we've had in the city as well. We're all taking a new approach to this. It's based off of state law, has changed, and state law has placed a search and rescue efforts that sometimes have been shared by the fire department are now the sole responsibility of the police department to do. So if a lost hiker gets lost on a trail, that's a police department search and rescue run operation. So we will be sharing some resources with each other. Typically, we'll bring in two search managers at a time for a little continuity of operations there, and it's time consuming and paper driven. But it has been successful. Our department is taking this serious. We've had some good stories already this year with finding some children, and always the community is a big help for that. So that's one group of individuals, and why they would need a take-home car is they would be on call 24 hours a day. They are in our department. Typically, our sergeants at the patrol level are our search managers, and so 4 of these cars are designated for them in the request. The other 2 cars are for our negotiators. And our negotiators are, again, another joint venture with the Sheriff's Department. They come out on all SWAT call-outs and barricaded subjects, mental health individuals, and they're there when we need them. So we call them. They come out. At least 2, sometimes 4 of them will work as a team. There's a manager and some real protocols that they follow in law enforcement negotiations. And our negotiators are very successful at talking people down off the edge and getting them to surrender to the police. It's one of our best assets in law enforcement to just to resolve the situation without having to use any kind of lethal force. We've been very fortunate with that group. We have 4 managers, but 2 of them already have take-home cars based on their other assignments within the police department, detectives. And so the other 2 cars would be to allow them to come in and respond in an emergency to the scene of the incident. So that's the cost of it. As we estimated before when we did take-home cars for detectives, about $1,000 per car for fuel and maintenance was what we budgeted, and that seems to be where we're finding our numbers. And that would be taken out of our normal fuel and maintenance costs within our department. We will not have to buy any new cars. We already have enough cars in the fleet for this. And I'll take any questions you have, Mr. Mayor or Council.
I see some nodding heads. Any objections to this?
Well, I guess I do have some questions.
Go ahead.
How many incidents like this do you have per year, or do you estimate you'll have per year?
Well, missing persons, we average about 300 a year. Calling people in on those, we're probably into a couple of dozen, where we're actually going to do sustained type of searching throughout the night and into the next day. So I would say a couple a month that we would envision bringing people in.
So the state law clarified, I heard you mention that fire was involved before. What changes brought this about?
Yeah, well, a tragedy always invokes Maryland law sometimes, and there was a missing person that enough effort was not put into searching for that person. So the state decided to mandate that certain protocol be followed, and they wanted the law enforcement, because a lot of these will start out as a camping accident or a lost hiker, which turns out to be a felony incident, a homicide or something like that. But the first person that reports that would send the fire department and search dogs all over the place on wild goose chases, only to find out that it was an act of criminal act that led to it. So they wanted the state wanted the law enforcement to lead all of these investigations, so to approach it from the beginning as a criminal, along with a search management component. So we've been training our police in what fire departments have actually been very good at all throughout the decades, which are searching for lost people. And they have a lot of experience in the incident command system. We use the same incident command system, sometimes a unified command system where a firefighter will work right with us. I've used the fire department before to help us search through the north end for a lost elderly person, and it's great. We just grid the area off and they come out. But the state wanted the law enforcement to lead those, and the management of that is very paper intensive, and it's basically at least it's a 2-person job. They're just dedicated to manage. We felt using the supervisors was a great way to manage those programs. They're used to managing people and filling out a lot of paperwork. And you cannot tax the supervisor that's working with the job, because they have the rest of the city to run. So they'll start it off for a little while, and if it's going to last for too long, they need to get back to their primary job. So then we had to bring in the search managers, and we would call in 2 at a time at a minimum to work the job. So that's a big change for us.
And I'll just make one comment, and this is not meant to be accusatory. It's just that we're having to really tighten the budget screws further and further, as I know you're fully aware. Mm-hmm. So, I don't want something like this brought up as the council made you do it. Now we need more cars in the future or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're going to accomplish this within your existing budget and your existing vehicle base.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. So and we need to, not have it be something that enters into new requests or something.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we're not adding new cars with this.
In the future, I'm talking.
No, I understand.
2 years from now, a year from now. But thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Questions or comments?
Okay.
I'll accept that as tacit approval of your proposal.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Comment before the chief leaves.
Mr. Munson?
The chief and his department need to be congratulated. I understand that there was a bank robbery in Hagerstown's North End this afternoon, and it didn't take the police but just a little while to figure out who did it. I don't know, you might want to make a comment, but congratulations on such fast action. Chief.
Sure.
And-
This story, and in fact, that's who was ringing me now, were the detectives. It's going to be one of those that goes down as the community made the difference in this one. We posted it through the newspaper and also on our Facebook page, and immediately got response from the community. Got a lot of leads from that, and the detectives were able to obtain an arrest warrant, and it's my understanding that person is now in custody. So we'll be getting a press release back out to the public. That's about as breaking news as it gets, because I got a text right before I sat down. So
Excellent.
we'll get the full story out here, hopefully within an hour, and thank the community again. So
Good job.
Aren't they ever going to learn it doesn't pay to rob a bank in Hagerstown, Maryland?
It never pays to rob a bank.
thank you.
You're right. You're right.
Just a postscript. One more example of the state.
You thought you were leaving, Chief.
One more, well, this is something I'm sure he'll sympathize, but one more example of the state imposing new requirements, new procedures without any moolah to accomplish it, or absorbing it. So just one more
Yes, sir.
example.
Yes, sir.
And I'll just note that last week, we put out a proclamation declaring Police Week, and tomorrow there'll be an event at the Hagerstown Police Department headquarters starting at 4 p.m. So I would invite anyone who's listening to come and be a part of that ceremony tomorrow.
Thank you. We've had 6 fallen officers over the years at the Hagerstown Police Department, and so it's good to remember them during Police Week. And by the way, that's why all the police wear the black ribbon across their badges for this week each year. So just a reminder. 4 o'clock tomorrow at HPD. Yes.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, that leads us to the Community Development Block Grant Budget Overview. We have John and Jonathan, or we have Michelle and Jonathan.
I have some handouts for everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you.
While Jonathan is handing out a summarized version of the CDBG budget, I will mention, of course, there are further details for the CDBG budget in our booklet. It's under the special revenue section if you have questions. At the time that we printed the budget book, we estimated that our entitlement money was going to be $600,000, an approximate 10% decrease from fiscal year 14 levels. The good news that we did receive, of course, after right before we came to budget in time for the budget message, that our actual entitlement money was, instead of being $600,000, is going to be $646,000. So it is still a decrease from our current year level, about a 3.3% decrease, but not quite as drastic as what we had originally anticipated. The reason for the handout is at the time that we printed the budget, because of all the uncertainty, we weren't able to do the 15% cap for public services, and we actually have committees now who go through a whole process, a selection and criteria process. So I'm going to let Jonathan kind of walk everybody through those numbers and through the handout in front of us.
Yes, as Michelle mentioned, because of the federal budget situation the past few years, the federal budget has delayed us in receiving our entitlement numbers much further into our budget cycle than in years past. So as Michelle had mentioned, the budget book had placeholders, and our best conservative estimate at the time of the CDBG entitlement numbers. And this handout breaks those placeholders down now into a more descriptive breakdown of the CDBG budget that's proposed for fiscal year 2015. Go ahead.
And I was going to say, do you want to go ahead and just mention the cap? The caps that's in place with the CDBG?
The 2 different caps that are always critical with the CDBG program are the public services cap and the general administration cap. The public services cap is 15% of the projected CDBG entitlement for the fiscal year of that entitlement. added onto the program income received from the previous fiscal year. So you would take the sum of those two numbers, and then 15% of those two, the sum of those two numbers would be your public services cap. For your general administration costs for the CDBG program, it's 20% of whatever the fiscal year that you're in, the entitlement number, and this it would be the 20% of the sum of that entitlement number plus that year's current program income. In FY 2015, our CDBG entitlement number actually turned out to be $646,183. The budget book at the time of printing, our estimate was $600,000, so we actually received about $46,000 more than we were anticipating. That is still somewhat down from fiscal year 2014's entitlement number of 600. I believe that was 666,000 and some change. And as you can see on the handout, most of these programs are mainstays that we've carried out through our CDBG program in recent years. We have funding in the CDBG budget for capital improvement projects, for walkability improvements, sidewalk improvements. We have funding for green space and parks in the city. We also have funding for housing programs that promote homeownership and also help sustain homeownership for existing homeowners. And we also have, of course, funding for our public services. And on the back of your handout is a breakdown of our public service funding scenario that we've presented tonight. And as Michelle mentioned, we now have a public service review committee that consists of 3 citizens from Hagerstown who work with staff to review the public service applications. And this mayor and council, I believe it was soon after they were elected to office, they established the Public Service Review Committee guidelines, and the mayor and council had created 3 targeted categories, which included funding for youth services, elderly care, or health care related programs. And with the way our entitlement numbers work out for fiscal year 2015, the funding scenario that we have put together is essentially level funding for all the organizations that had received funding last year at the same amount. And I can flip that over on the big screen as well. And usually most of our discussion with our CDBG program, especially at our public hearings, relates to the public service funding. So that's a overview of the CDBG budget we wanted to present to the mayor and council prior to the public hearing, to have everyone get a chance to take a look at what's proposed and take this time to also answer some questions.
So as you can see on the synopsis on the back, the current slide that's on the overhead here, the cap using our $646,000 entitlement plus our program income for these types of services is right around $105,000. So you can see pretty quickly from this in the highlighted area the committee's criteria and their selection and how the money is being allocated of that $105,000 for the public services. So it's going to Children in Need, Community Free Clinic, Senior Living Alternatives, Community Action Council, Girls Inc. for the supper program, and Food and Friends. And you'll also see very nicely summarized on this, you'll see to the left there who received funding from these funds in fiscal year 14 as well. One of the other things to mention, if we flip back to the front, Jonathan covered the public facility improvements, specifically the accessibility ramps, the handicap ramps. Those are actually projects that the city of Hagerstown has incorporated into their CIP fund, and if you look in that section, you'll see that our funding source to carry out these programs are actually with our CDBG monies. And I'm just trying to think, Jonathan, is there anything else you kind of want to highlight? Any big changes? I mean, everything else
No major
is pretty
changes.
much
I'd say
aligned.
many of the programs are mainstays, and it's essentially a very similar budget to last year. The numbers are a little different with some of the different programs, but I believe really the only new the new activity is the addition of sidewalk cellar door replacement. We had mentioned that when we had discussed the Franklin Street enhancement, gateway enhancement plan. We have $30,000 in the CDBG budget to replace some of those old rickety, unsafe sidewalk cellar doors in the Franklin Street area of downtown.
Any questions or comments for staff? Mr. Alshire?
Two questions. I guess two questions that relate specifically to this information. The first is there a cap on housing as part of the percentage of CDBG distribution?
No cap.
Okay. Could the HNDP fair housing amount be included in the housing portion versus public services?
Based upon the regulations and the program description on the HNDP application, fair housing counseling falls within a public service activity, so it would fall under the public service cap calculation.
So it can't be included in the housing?
No, I mean, it could be maybe described as a housing activity, but it would still have to be applied to a public service activity.
Okay.
Cap.
Could the $50,000 that we have allocated to other agencies within the budget that goes to HNDP, could that be included in the housing component of the CDBG budget?
No, if I remember correctly, you're speaking about the $50,000. It's a general fund contribution, and I believe it goes to their operations. In the past, we did fund the home store with CDBG funding operations, but that actually would count against our admin cap, and that admin cap for us has become really tight with the reduction of the entitlement. So our admin cap is roughly $160,000, and you see at the bottom of that printout, our projected admin expenses are $151,000.
So there's nothing within the operations of the H&DP as it applies to housing that funding that H&DP uses could be applied to the housing category within the CDBG?
At least not the programs that they've applied for us for funding.
At one time years ago, I think we allocated CD funds for HNDP for bricks and mortar projects under housing, with the hope that they could undertake those kind of projects. But I don't think under the current work plan, they're anticipating that kind of project based on their discussion with council.
Certainly, there could be a housing activity if any outside organization would carry out an eligible housing activity. It could.
But none of their current and proposed operations for the next fiscal year within the home store can be applied to the housing category in this CDBG budget?
Not in the budget, no. Not that we have presented, not the fair housing, nor not the $50,000 that you had referenced.
Any other comments, questions? Mr. Brubaker? Still mulling things over? No? Mr. Munson?
Have these places been notified, or are they going to read about this in the newspaper?
No, they were notified. Our planning and outreach coordinator traditionally tries to keep in communication with them via email.
Okay.
And until actually the final approval of the budget?
Yeah, we typically try to give them a heads up that these are proposed, but ultimately the mayor and council have the final say, so we don't have anything official until after the budget cycle.
Anything else? All right, thank you, staff.
Thank you.
We are under time and I don't want to say under budget. At this time, we'll have the city administrator's comments.
None from me this afternoon.
All right, we'll start with council. Who would like to start? Mr. Brubaker.
I would like someone else to start. How's that?
Go ahead, Mr. Alshire.
I have 3 items. The first is, I believe that if I'm not mistaken, the approval of the ASME 1540 Memorandum of Agreement. That's out of the 4 bargaining units that we have. We've approved 3, and we've actually approved that one twice now, right? Is that a fair assessment?
Mm-hmm.
So this body in the year and a half, less than 2
1
years.
year, 4 months, 3 weeks.
Yeah, have been in office, have managed to not only settle contracts amicably with 3 of our 4 units, but at least one of those units twice, which brings to bear the reiteration to our citizens that that's our responsibility, not some third-party arbitrator that isn't voted into office, that doesn't get the opportunity to look at a 250-page budget and figure out how they're going to reasonably afford it and reasonably afford all of those things. That rests with this body. And I think that our ability to solve those amicably with those units and one on more than one occasion in a year's time speaks to the very real fact that we don't need a binding arbitrator. We have had the ability to resolve those contracts, with those bargain units that have found reason within the budget with us to do so. And I would just continue to urge our citizens, because I heard it again this weekend, that a family member was stopped at a social function, and at that social function by somebody with a petition said, the city won't allow the firefighters in the city ordinance, that we won't recognize them in the city code. I'm not even sure what that means. And it's just amazing, as I said in my editorial very plainly, the amount of misinformation and disinformation that our citizens, the taxpayers, are receiving on this subject. And so I want to reflect positively that we've been able to do that, on behalf of the citizens, because that's part of our charge, not part of some third-party person. The second is downtown. I wanted to note that we, my family and I, which if you can imagine, sort of corralling 5 kids under the age of 6 into downtown, not just by yourselves, but when there's 500 people at a wind down Friday, or a couple of hundred folks at the hubbub. But I wanted to note on both occasions, we did something that we normally do. We ate, and Friday night, sort of family night, we go eat somewhere. But it was interesting because as we have added, you see the cost add, and that's just a function of the process. But on both occasions, and I guess it's really been 3 occasions, we ate at the Gourmet Goat, 28 South, and we ate at Greens and Grains the other night. We're sort of 500 people are half a block away doing Wind Down Friday. We had to find a place where, I could keep an eye out. But in every instance, 2 things occurred. One is it was cheaper. And I don't know how else to say that, but it just was. When I compare what we pay when we go to the mall or the Alex or some chain restaurant and you eat at the food court or some place that you grab along the way, there was 2 differences. The first is it's more expensive at those places. And the second is the food was by far healthier. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but it just was, Greens and Grains especially. The girls there were great, but in both occasions, I would note those 2 things. And as sort of somebody of my generation, that has for most of my life been told or given a vision of what downtown is, this sort of place, you don't go and you don't do these things. I've been saying this over and over, our educational component for our youth downtown, expanding that footprint, changes the dynamic in which the next generation thinks about downtown, that is completely lost on my generation. And so for what it's worth, thank those restaurants and the events for making that happen. The last is EDC meeting Thursday of last week. I won't ask Don to touch on this, but there was a debate because what has occurred is the same thing that has occurred on a number of occasions now, which is the voting membership of the EDC discuss an item with no knowledge or discourse among us, the elected liaisons to that board, on what's being discussed and how it's being presented and where they're at in the process. And on this occasion, it happened to be one of the 5 strategic plans, which was the city center. So here, the voting membership of the EDC has completed an entire process of one of the 5 strategic priorities being, what to do for revitalization of the city center, without ever including the 2 city council liaisons to that board in the conversation. Even to the degree that
Or staff.
Or staff.
I
Now,
don't
staff
think they
was present in,
included
I think,
staff
2 or
either.
3 meetings, but to give you an example of that, there were 6 total meetings from September to December. There was a different makeup of the folks attending, of 3 to 5 folks, in any number of those 6 meetings. And at the end of December, there were 6 or 7 recommendations. And now we got the final report that was voted on Thursday by the EDC of 11 recommendations. So somewhere between December and May, they added 4 or 5 additional recommendations. Don and I have yet to see a copy of the report. I made the very plain statement, it's hard for us to be liaisons if we're not being liaisoned with, and I'm not sure if that's a word, but it just is. And it's hard to participate in that, what you perceive as a public board to be part of that public discourse, if the entire process is going to be levied back and forth via, virtual process. We're not getting copies of these reports or, drafts, at our meetings the way you would envision. And so I brought up the point that, unless we see a copy, that report's going to go to the county commissioners. They're going to vet it in their process. We got our report going. We're going to vet it in our process. And the only thing at the end of the day is the paper's going to say these 2 bodies are doing 2 completely different things again. See, it's happening. And I was trying to avoid that. So I think we are getting a copy under 2 conditions. 1, we can't make any comment on it. And 2, we're not supposed to release it to the public. I'm not even sure that is a reasonable way to proceed, under a public charge for what generally is a publicly created body. So that was sort of the process for that day, and I think is representative. And staff did follow up with me and did let me know that they weren't aware either. They've seen 1 draft, but were never aware that Don and I had never received a draft until about 2 weeks ago. On the 1 occasion that I know one of our staff did attend and talked about, and this is a prime example, talked about the example of this Main Street program, which we're looking at doing. I mean, it's in our budget, and staff went to one of these committee meetings and said, hey, we'd like to proceed with the Main Street program. Here's how we'd like to do it. It'll be something within the city departmental responsibility and function. And the EDC folks said, hey, we think that should be a 501c3. And so the next meeting, and within this report, it clearly says it should be a 501c3. So even if staff's going to the meetings and input's not being taken, it's really not, productive and key to the process. But I have yet to find or be informed of why we as liaisons to the EDC weren't included, because no one seems to know who made the decision not to include the non-voting members in the deliberations over a city center plan that clearly, as city council members, we would have some comment to share in it. So those are my comments.
All right, who'd like to go next?
I have nothing.
No comments? Ms. Nye?
All right, the 200 block of North Locust. I was down working at the Alms House, putting flowers and all in, and that block is struggling so much. There's been another homeowner that has moved out, and probably now we may be looking at 7. I really don't have the figures. They're on my phone because Gary had given those figures to me. A young man had come out, which I knew from back when I had ran the second time, and how it was a struggle then with all of the problems that was down there. And he is living in a double. The other half of his has not been taken care of for years. And we continue to see the demise of a lot of homes. And I just don't understand why we cannot get on top of the people who owns them to really make them do something. On our block, you know, it's a matter of $10,000 in fines, and we're still looking at a horrible place. Down where this young boy is living, there is a roof that has got leaks going down through the house, a tarp that has been on it since last fall. And again, summer comes, the grass is so tall. We have all of this. But here's another family that will probably be now looking to also leave. And I mean, he has put quite a large investment in that home. And that's where he wanted his kids to be able to go to school, was in Hagerstown. And it's just sad. And I mean, you have to look at that 200 block in order to appreciate it. And we have riffraff from off of Randolph that is becoming a huge detriment in the alleys, that is doing whatever they need to do to also add to this whole mess. Between automobiles being broken into, all of the vandalism that's going on, over $1,000 worth to his vehicle alone. And it just continues to go. And the apartment building that is now beside the Alms House has again now been sold. So this has been 3 owners that I remember since I had been in office. And I just don't know where that apartment building is headed. The last go round, it was horrible. The man who now has it, and only for a short period of time, did do something to start cleaning it up, and now it has gone by the wayside because he's selling it. And I don't know what's going to happen with that. Also, Don and I was at the Neighborhoods First meeting. That does not have a name yet in the North End. And there were concerns because we have had problems in that inn, and Chief Holtzman had addressed a lot of them with answers that he was able to. And the one that was the one that really stood out, and I had asked about this before, and it really concerned me, and that was the fact that our police department does not have a person sitting in that lobby 24 hours a day. Okay?
Which lobby? At the
In the police lobby, you cannot get into. You are only right there as you can come through the door, I'm assuming, just in a small part where you could pick up a phone and hopefully get somebody, but there is no one. And I just think in a town our size, there should be a person in there manning that. And all of this, again, comes right back to budget. And this would be a part-time employee. The most time that they are there, I believe it's probably from 7 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock until 8 o'clock in the evening. That police department needs to be open. The big concern is that the people from the Neighborhoods First, the one who was very vocal, is the fact that our 911 center is not working. And we should have our own police officer being able to take the calls to get our officers where they need to get to. Well, reality is, and I kept my mouth shut. Holtzman was doing all of his, but the reality was we left our dispatch go to 911. That was that was our whole thing of doing this. So I really don't know how that one is going to fly, but I feel that we personally do need to have someone in that lobby. If somebody has an emergency or they're even running from somebody, and 911, try it, okay, and they're not right on it, then we could have somebody that could be killed right there. And I think it's very poor. We need to do something. That's it.
Mr. Brubaker.
Yes, tonight we're having the hearing on the proposed budget, and I appreciate getting remarks from citizens who will be coming to attend. I just want to put it out there because I'm continue to work with staff trying to solve it as on a 3-year basis to the extent you can, as opposed to skating through 1 year. And the assessable base is down, our resources are down. So for everything, every position we need to add for a particular service or there's nothing to pay for it except additional taxes, increases in fees, or a raise of other things. So we face a genuine struggle. I think we can get through it and continue with pride in our city and continue to maintain the current array of services. If we can't get the tax base back up at the next assessment cycle, I'm not sure how much farther we can go on. So for people that are coming, it would be interesting to see if they want additional spending, where the resources would come from, or if they want no new taxes, how they would, what services they would propose to dispense with. It would be an interesting proposition. I know that's our job, but suggestions are always welcome. So, and then finally, I want to commend Councilman Alshire's letter today in the newspaper. I think I could offer some choice words for the things that have been told to me by people not knowing who I am, asking to sign these petitions, and me knowing that they're outright misrepresentations. And I think there's a real issue there. But people need to realize, in context of what I just said about the budget, what they're really talking about are large mandated increases in compensation and funding and expense for city services that the city council will have no control over. So that's what it boils down to.
Again, you have to look no further than Chambersburg, where
Right.
they had binding arbitration
So if you want
in the
that,
situation of firefighters,
and
where
you
there
don't
was
want
a
us to wait-
13-cent
Right.
increase on their
Right.
tax, and they named the tax after the third-party arbitrator that basically mandated it on them.
And safe to say, as Mr. Alshire just said, we have offered them a very reasonable offer, well within the same bounds that we offered to the other 3 negotiating unions, and we haven't gotten a response on it, and I don't know where that's going to go. And if we do get a response and this petition business continues, how sincere is that? So people should be aware of what it means.
Mr. Munson.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things. First, I'd like to just say that Penny is right on target. That particular block of Locust Street is definitely in need of intensive work. And frankly, it's going down so fast there that I think the city of Hagerstown really needs to look at establishing some sort of a special program that would intensely work on that block. I know there are staff members that we have who are really concerned about what's happened to that block. It's not going to get any better unless there's some work done down there, lots of work. Also, a couple of other things. Secondly, I would like to congratulate a man whom we all know and who has helped Hagerstown and Washington County endlessly over the last 20 years. He is Senator President Thomas V. Mike Miller, President of the Maryland Senate. He was recently awarded the 2014 Distinguished Legislators Award by the Maryland Municipal League based on his efforts in this session to keep $16 million in Maryland city and town transportation projects budget. And he helped shepherd that money through. And of course, that was money that was taken away from us in the past, and that money that we badly need. And it's helped us a little bit, a tiny bit at least, to balance the present budget, which is still of great concern, obviously. And I can say this, that having served in Annapolis, that Mike Miller has always been a friend of Hagerstown and of Washington County. And he's looked out for us a lot of times throughout the years. And I'm really proud of and grateful for those efforts that he's made on behalf of us up here. Mike never forgot that there was a Western Maryland in all the years that I knew him. And the third thing is, Mayor, if you and the City Council would indulge me, there's a lady here by the name of Nancy Smith, whom we all know from last year. Nancy's with the Maryland Food Bank. And she came up to talk about her program a little bit. We gave the Maryland Food Bank funding last year, and they've done a lot of good things as a consequence of that funding. And she drove up from Baltimore County and has to return to Baltimore County. And if the mayor and council would indulge allowing her to say a couple of words before we end. I know this is a little bit unusual, but she drove a long way and she has a long way to go when she drives back. If she could come forward and say a couple of words, Mayor.
Please, Nancy.
And she also has with her assistant in Washington County, Matt Thompson, whom we met last year as well.
Thank you, Councilman Munson. I appreciate that, and it's good to see you all again. As you know, last year, the Maryland Food Bank came and asked the mayor and the council members if they would fund us, and you did that. And I think it's important that we come and show you and tell you the results of that funding. This year, we've asked for another funding request, but I think it's real important that we had some letters of support, and they're really touching letters. So I brought 2 copies for the council folks to see, and just to, you know, it's always nice when you get letters when you do what you're supposed to do, you know, and a lot of times people don't take the time to write a letter, but I know probably from your experience, it really means something when somebody takes the time to write something down that means something that you've done for them. So Matt Thompson is our director of our Maryland Food Bank on the Western Branch. And we've had some pretty amazing results from last year to this year, and I'm going to let Matt expand on that.
Perfect. So for the sake of time, I'll be quick. We're
Pull that microphone over.
this one. We're a distribution center, so we don't do direct service to the hungry family. We serve local partners. We have over 70 partners in Washington County now. A bulk of those are in the city. What we're seeing, and you probably hear this throughout the county, is we're seeing a vast increase in people that have never needed help before. What used to be independent middle class is now seeking our services. So in fiscal 12, before the food bank came, the Maryland Food Bank merged, we distributed about 1.2 million pounds out the door. It's about 2,500 meals a day. Fiscal 13, we doubled it, 2.4 million pounds. At the end of this year, by the end of July, we'll crest 5 million pounds. It's over 11,000 meals a day out the door. So with your help, we've been able to do that. We're in the school systems, giving food to local administrations in school to help increase educational outcomes. We're in senior centers, distributing food. All of this is for free to the end user to help some of our most vulnerable in the community. So with the funding again this year, we'll continue to do that. Something that that people often don't think of as a food bank is part of the economic development piece. We went from 2.5 full-time employees. Those same 3 gentlemen are still employed with us, but now we have 10 total full-time employees. Last year, we spent almost $25,000 on local farmers buying product that they would have otherwise thrown away. We've spent over $125,000 this year with local contractors establishing a second tier to help hold our 10 employees. So not only are we contributing in what you would think of as a food bank, but we're also spending money in the community. Our contractors are Washington County contractors who live here and spend their money downtown at our local businesses. So thank you. As always, you have an open invitation. Just show up, give me a call. We'd love to give you a tour and show you what we're doing.
And if I could add on, in our fiscal year last year, we distributed almost 1 million pounds of food into the Hagerstown. This year so far, we've distributed about 900,000, and we still have a ways, to go. But I'm just saying that we continue to see increases. Not a good thing, but as Matt said, our focus is really a lot of the middle-class families that are struggling to make it right now, and our youth hunger initiatives. So I just want to say thank you for your support last year. I hope you can support us again this year. We chose to fold in food resources into our operation because we know that we can do a good job in Western Maryland and in the city of Hagerstown. So I thank you for the support. And as Matt said, when we get our office done, our upstairs, we're going to have an open house, and I'll make sure that each one of you get an invitation and come out and just see what we're about. And we'll have our year-end results for you for Hagerstown. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll leave these here. Councilman Munson, thanks again.
Thank you, Nancy.
Anything further, Mr. Munson?
I'd just like to say thank you to the council and to you, Mr. Mayor, for indulging
Sure.
me on that.
I'll take some responsibility because I think I told them the wrong time. So I hadn't figured out everything. There's so much going on in Hagerstown, it's hard to keep track of. But I do want to say, first of all, congratulations to the Hagerstown Suns, because they are far and away the best team in the South Atlantic League right now. And I would just encourage anyone to go out and catch a ball game. We do still have a great quality professional baseball here in Hagerstown, and I hope the community continues to support them despite the issues we've had dealing with the ownership. Also today, we welcomed Delegate and Chairwoman Maggie McIntosh to Hagerstown. She's a delegate from Baltimore who chairs the Environmental Matters Committee and sits on Ways and Means. I got to tour the Volvo plant with her, and I have to say I'd never been in there as long as I've lived in Hagerstown, and it is amazing what they do in there. 35 acres under roof, over 1 million square feet, innovation happening every day, the amount of highly educated folks who come in from all over the world to help with those innovative products. I learned more about truck transmissions today than I ever thought I would, but the fact is that they're getting greener. They're getting more advanced in terms of the engineering and what they're capable of doing there. So it was a really interesting visit, not only in terms of just what they do there as a plant, but in terms of the economic draw that they have in our community, talking about how when they're trying to recruit engineers to come work for them, how many times they're looking, not for the job necessarily, but for the place where they want to live. And so that's where the kinds of things that we offer in our downtown and our city center come into play when it comes to attracting the kind of quality workforce that they have working for them. So I just wanted to mention that, and also thank Delegate McIntosh for visiting us today. This weekend, there's a ton of events. On Saturday, the Day of Hope will be taking place at Wheaton Park this Saturday, the 17th, from noon to 4. Also, there's an event called Hagerstown Hopes, which is a celebration of the LGBT community, and that'll be happening at Dowd's Woods. I believe that also starts at noon. There is at the Museum of Fine Arts on the front lawn the Bare Necessities event, and that is all towards the an event to raise money and awareness for the bear sculpture that will be going in City Park, and they'll be raffling off an item of sculpture by the artist who is doing that project at City Park. And also it's Railroad Heritage Weekend, so there'll be events happening at City Park and also at the Roundhouse Museum. So lots to do in Hagerstown this week and this weekend, and lots to be proud of. And with that, we will take a break until the 7 o'clock continuation of our special session. We'll have our public hearings. Thank you. Continue our special session. I would request there be a motion to go into special session.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to go into special session. Any discussion? All those in favor of going into special session, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. We are back in special session. We have public hearings scheduled for tonight for 3 particular items: the FY15 Tax Rate, the FY15 Budget, and the Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan. So we will be starting those hearings in just a moment. As soon as we get the list of names, I think we could probably start. I think I can recall the 2 folks who signed up. I think first on the tax rate. Oh, staff.
Yeah, staff.
Sure.
Right.
Please.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and Council and citizens. We're here tonight. This public hearing is to discuss our tax rate that was published. The notice was published on April 29, 2014. And the tax rate at this time, Mayor and Council is considering an increase in our real property tax rate. Beginning July 1 of 2014, it's estimated that our real property assessable base is going to decrease by 7.8%. To help offset this decrease in assessable values, the Mayor and Council is considering an 11-cent increase in real property tax rates. The city's current tax rate is 78.8 cents per $100 of assessments. With the proposed increase, the new real property tax rate would be 89.8 cents per $100 of assessments. And now we'll open it up.
I think we'll start with the tax rate. I know Brett Wilson is here and signed up to speak for that, so I'm going to invite him to the podium. If you don't mind, let me just say for the record, meetings are televised and recorded. Your comments will be on air and on tape, and we request that you limit your comments to 5 minutes. And please state your name and record for name and address for the record. Please.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. My name is Brett Wilson. I live at 1435 Potomac Avenue in Hagerstown, Washington County, Maryland. Thank you for hearing me, and I apologize for my address. I coach my son's soccer team on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays.
No apologies necessary.
No really time to get home before coming here. And I really just have some comments and perhaps one question for additional clarification on the budget and tax rate, if you don't mind if I merge those two together. I know they're separate sign-up sheets, but it seemed like really the same issue as far as I could tell. First, just to let you know, I fully understand that when we talk about taxes, we're really talking about...
Brett, pull your microphone up just...
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah, it is.
Thank you. When we talk about tax rates, obviously we're talking, or taxes, we're normally talking about the total revenues to any municipal body, that being the ultimate goal of a city to have constant tax revenues so that they can afford the programs and the other type of mechanisms that they need to supply to the citizens. With this particular rate increase, I think it just points out, and this is purely comment, I know there's not a whole lot this council can do about, but it really points out the unfortunate circumstance that our economic circumstances are decreasing where the economic circumstances in the areas around us are increasing, and that is going to lead to further problems in the future if it's not stopped. And I know this board has limited ability to affect how this state is competitive against states to our north or south, or even counties to our east or west. But I think that is the issue that needs to be addressed ultimately before we as Hagerstownians are going to be able to stabilize our tax rates and actually see growth in property values and revenues. Particular to this budget, obviously we would request further clarification on the need to increase the tax rate above what would maintain a constant yield rate for property taxes. I have had conversation with Councilman Metzner about unexpected increases in workers' compensation expenses and some other expenses, but I think the people certainly deserve as precise a clarification, without looking through the notebook over there, of what is causing the additional 4 cents, I guess, per assessment that has been proposed. Secondly, and this is one specific to the summary fact sheet that's been provided, it says there is a $1.5 million general fund supported bond issue in the coming year for downtown project if mayor and council wish to support a project as a result of the Urban Partners report. I would ask if that project, that proposed project, has any definition to it. Also, as it's a bond issue, it increases the debt long-term, and just whether there is projected revenue to come out of that project that would help pay for it in the long term. So if we get clarification on those issues, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Greg.
I'll just address your points real quick. I think in terms of the difference between the constant yield, what we would have to increase the rate in order to get the constant yield, and the additional money that's being included is precisely what you mentioned, the unexpected dramatic increases in workers' comp and other insurance costs, in addition to the wage enhancements for the labor groups and employees. That alone makes up the difference. It's simply those two items. When it comes to the downtown project, we haven't identified that as a mayor and council at this point, but certainly, the hottest of the projects that are being proposed, even in the Urban Partners report, is the Barbara Ingram School Maryland Theater. So that would be, that's not a decision that's been made by this body, but I would say that that's probably where we're going to be focusing.
But so there's no misunderstanding. We would never, ever pass a bond bill without having identified.
Absolutely.
So it may be in the budget, but that doesn't mean it'll even be done this year.
Right. Okay, the next person that signed up to speak on the tax rate is Michael Heiser.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I came here tonight to ask for you to pass a budget without a tax hike, or at least a reduced tax hike. It's evident to me that anyone else that's paying attention, that our city is in financial straits. I believe our only hope is to attract out-of-town investors. Now, I'm certainly not an expert about that subject, but it would appear to me that one of the primary factors in choosing a location for investment is the cost of doing business in that location. And it appears that we are about to significantly increase those costs. The justification put forth for the 11-cent increase is the 7.8% decrease in the city's assessable base as compared to the previous assessments. But it should be obvious to all of us by now that the previous round of tax assessments was essentially a fairy tale. We're comparing today's assessable base to figures that time has shown us had nothing to do with reality. Now, if we go back just 10 years to a time when banks were offering mortgages only to folks who actually could pay for them, we see a different story. According to the city budget, the assessable base in fiscal year 2004-2005, before the housing boom, was a little less than $1.64 billion. The proposed budget's accessible base is projected at $2.426 billion. This is an increase of nearly 48% over the 10-year period. Other than gasoline and health care, is there anything that's increased 48% since 2005? Not that I pay for. So I don't see how we can blame the need for the increase on the assessable base. Now, I know that a tax increase is the easiest way to go. You do the math and approve it. I also know that cost cutting is time-consuming and gut-wrenching, about the most unpleasant undertaking that a business or a government will ever do. Now, there are many talented folks in city government. I know many of them. They're quality people, and quality people deserve to get paid quality wages. And I, like most people, want the best and the brightest working for me in city government. I want the best municipal services in the state of Maryland. But I also want a Lamborghini Countach in my driveway, and I can't afford that either. I moved here 26 years ago to a community where my roots were deep. As John Denver said, I came home to a place that I'd never been before. I've come to love Hagerstown, and I hope to live here for the rest of my life. I will not be retiring to Florida or Washington, D.C. or anywhere else. I'm asking you to take the difficult path so that I and all the people I've come to love in this community can have a brighter future and a stable economy. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Those are the only folks who signed up for the tax rate. And again, we don't have to have any particular order, but I'm going to flip over to the budget side of things. And the first person to sign up there is Vicky. I'm going to mispronounce your name, so I'm not even going to try it and let you introduce yourself.
Good evening. My name is Vicky Setvandi, and I am Director of CASA here in Hagerstown. I'm here tonight to express CASA's appreciation from our board, our staff, and those that we take care of. The City Council actually made our shelter possible through a community development block grant. We have 40 beds, 6 cribs, and oftentimes people sleeping on our couches. So the services that we provide, both at our shelter and our building, are critical to those in crisis in Washington County and Hagerstown. So we're asking that you continue the support that you so generously give us, and because we really depend on that support. It fills the gaps that our grants are unable to provide. So that's what I'm asking for tonight, just to express our appreciation and your continued support. Any questions of me?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilson, did you want to speak again on the budget?
I just signed up. I wasn't sure which order they would go in.
Okay, thank you. And Robin Robertson.
I actually am here for CDBG. Did I sign the wrong form?
It doesn't really matter, but you can. I mean, we can skip you for now, or we can come back to you. Yeah, come on up.
I'm ready.
We're all ears.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here on behalf of the Community Free Clinic. The City of Hagerstown has very generously supported our laboratory program for many years through the Community Development Block Grant Program. We come to you again this year to ask for funding again for our laboratory program, which is a very critical part of the way we practice medicine. We see patients, our providers provide medical care, but they need to have bigger, better answers to what's actually going on with our patients. And the way that we do that is through blood work. You can actually see where a patient is in their disease process. You can monitor the success that they're achieving with their outlined medical regimen. Oftentimes, it identifies issues that are going on with the patient before we even know about it. So it's a very critical service to our patients. In light of the Affordable Care Act, I just want to share that our current patient ratio is 1 to 5. For every 1 patient leaving our clinic, we are accepting 5 new ones. We expected that this was going to happen, so we were somewhat prepared, but it has been very difficult financially to meet the needs of all who come through our doors. But on a positive side, we have not had to stop taking new patients. So this funding is critical. It's a very big part of how we practice medicine, and I really appreciate your consideration, your continued support, and your involvement in our organization and what we do. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And we also have Matt Thompson with the Maryland Food Bank.
So thankfully, we have not asked for money for the community block development grant because I wouldn't want you to give it to me instead of Robin. We work hand in hand with the Community Free Clinic, and I think we share, at the Maryland Food Bank, we share our appreciation for all that you guys do to support us. One thing that I just wanted to make mention of tonight that you may be aware of, but what we're seeing, and I think the other nonprofits in the room would attest to this, the new face of poverty is different than it's always been. The new face is what used to be our middle class America, that as the jobs go away or the cost of living increases, there's 100 different variables that lead people to this place. But who we're seeing are people with tears in their eyes that say, I don't know what to do, I've never been here before. Those folks that probably used to turn out to these meetings and give their opinions and have done their research and present what they think as citizens, they're now in survival mode, just trying to figure out how to feed their families, how to get the health services that they need. So on behalf of them, we want to say thank you for supporting the food bank. Thank you for supporting the nonprofits in the community. And I'll leave it at that. So thank you.
Thank you. And we had one person sign up for the Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan, even though we're hearing, or do we have to have a special statement from staff on that?
Yeah, we
or?
should from John. If
Okay.
we can, just to open the hearing.
Sure.
To meet the HUD guidelines.
Absolutely.
Block grant program.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
The purpose of this public hearing is to give interested citizens and organizations an opportunity to comment on the projects that are proposed in Hagerstown's Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, Draft Annual Action Plan for fiscal year 2015. Along with the CDBG Needs hearing that was held in November of 2013, this public hearing encourages citizen participation in the CDBG planning process and meets the requirement of HUD regulations regarding citizen engagement. Copies of the proposed annual action plan have been available for review since May 3rd, 2014, and they can be viewed at the City Clerk's Office, the Department of Community and Economic Development Office, the Washington County Free Library, or online on the city's website. The city estimates total fiscal year 2015 CDBG expenditures to be $1,066,021. The source of this funding includes $646,183 from the city's annual CDBG entitlement. This is approximately a 4% reduction from the fiscal year 2014 entitlement and continues the trend of federal budget cuts to the CDBG program. Since 2011, the city's entitlement has been reduced by approximately 40%. The city anticipates having $431,611 in CDBG funding from loan repayments, disposition of CDBG home ownership homes, and funds from previous entitlements. In an effort to focus on neighborhood-based projects, significant portions of CDBG funds are allocated to housing projects and neighborhood projects throughout the city. $539,183, or 50% of the total CDBG budget, is proposed for various housing activities. This includes funding for the city housing rehabilitation programs, the Emergency Repair Grant Program, the CDBG Home Ownership Program, the Commission on Aging Home Repair Grants for Seniors Program, and the Community Partners Incentive Program for down payment assistance. $270,000, or 25% of the total CDBG budget, is proposed for multiple neighborhood-based projects, which include construction of a park and a site to be determined, sidewalk accessibility improvements throughout the city, sidewalk cellar door replacements in the city center, and commercial property rehabilitation programs. CDBG regulations stipulate that the amount a community can expend on a public service may not exceed 15% of the current year entitlement plus the prior year's program income. The regulatory cap on public services for fiscal year 2015 is estimated to be $105,000. The proposed fiscal year 2015 CDBG budget takes into account rankings from the Public Service Review Committee, which consisted of 3 Hagerstown residents. Elderly housing, health services to low and moderate income individuals, and activities for children and youth were established as CDBG targeted categories in the public service funding guidelines adopted by the Mayor and Council in 2014. A potential funding scenario for fiscal year 2015 public service funding includes funding for organizations meeting these priorities. Approval of the CDBG annual action plan is scheduled to take place during the May 27th regular session meeting. The public comment period will be open until May 19th, 2014. This concludes staff comments.
Thank you, staff. At this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Doug Wright to come up and speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council persons, greetings. If I could just read a short statement. I'm here to thank the city and mayor and council for their continued support of Holly Place. Your support is drastic to our operation and represents almost 10% of the net funds that we need to operate every year. Holly Place was established in 1988 to provide housing for low-income, frail, elderly persons for whom neither independent living or nursing home placement is appropriate. It is the sole operation of Senior Living Alternatives, Inc., which is a nonprofit 501c3 organization. Our facility rents to 15 individuals with limited financial resources who need assistance in their daily needs. Our guests are cared for by a staff of 10 full-time and 4 part-time employees who provide complete assisted living needs, 24 hours awake supervision, and general loving support. 15 people, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. That's 131,000 hours of care. Our cost providing this service this past year was $595,200, which calculates out to $3,300 per resident per month. While some of our residents do receive as much as $2,650 per month in state Medicaid waiver support, the majority can only afford what they receive in Social Security, which can range between $515 to $1,730 per month. It's for this shortfall between what it costs us to serve them and what we receive for that service is what we need to turn to community for every year. And it's again why I'm here today to thank you all. I'm pleased to report this past year we received, including your monies from the CBDG, $258,474 in community support. But we still ended up with a shortfall of a little over $2,000. So again, thank you very much for your support. It's absolutely critical to our operation.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you. I believe that exhausts the folks who signed up. Is there anyone in the audience who did not sign up who would like to speak on either the tax rate, the budget, or the CDBG grant program? Please. Please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Diane Eves, Hagerstown. I seem to remember in one of the articles in the newspaper indicating that next year the property taxes are likely to be increased as well by a somewhat significant amount. And I guess my concern is the increasing burden on the taxpayer, because it's very easy for people to move to West Virginia and Pennsylvania. Probably everyone in this room knows of someone, more than one family, who has moved to either of those states, which leaves an increased burden on those of us who remain and would like to remain and still keep our houses. So I understand the need for the increase in the tax rate, but I am concerned for the future if it continues to go up. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bartels? Even though we all know who you are, if you don't mind introducing yourself, name and address for the record, please.
I don't know whether to be complimented by you know who I am or...
Well, you can certainly, from me, take it as a compliment, Janet.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Interesting, my name is Janet Bartels, and I live on South Mulberry Street, Elizabethtown East, Neighborhoods First. And this marks the 10th anniversary of living in Hagerstown, and the 10th anniversary of speaking at these budget hearings. I spoke at this one 10 years ago on the same issue, and so maybe I'm Janet One Note. But And I'm here also, instead of being here with my husband Gordon, I'm here with my neighbor Virginia, who I share the roof with on South Mulberry Street, who has lived in Hagerstown for over 53 years, and has been involved in Elizabethtown East Neighborhoods First since we started that years ago. And when I spoke here 10 years ago, I spoke on behalf of the city allocating more money for its city children in the program, after-school programs of CSAFE, in which Gordon and I were participating then. After that, we added, we became master gardeners, since we had spent 26 years gardening in New Hampshire, which we thought we had mastered that, and we thought it would be a cinch in Maryland, so we started working with the CSAFE after-school kids in community gardening. And I'm speaking here tonight on that same subject, which is to put your focus, as I've spoken many times in the 10 years, put your focus on the neighborhoods. If you have ignored the neighborhoods, they have it was, with the housing crisis, the neighborhoods have gone into crisis themselves. With the removal of the hospital, our neighborhood is in crisis. And if you develop the neighborhoods and work with the county and the school board, and they need to work, these are their children too, then we will develop the downtown. You cannot have the tax increases and have the poorest people paying the highest taxes. You cannot have you cannot develop downtown businesses with having no one be able to afford, in the surrounding neighborhoods, be able to afford to use them. You need to put your development into the neighborhoods so that the downtown will take care of itself. And what I mean by that is that reinstituting a full-time Neighborhoods First coordinator, increasing the number of code compliance officers, developing the library parking lot, and the Massey property, the Bester property, there, bring back the urban agriculture that Clara Bester had there, that brought in over, $1 million when she died. I think, and develop your community garden program, which was couple that into a much more extensive urban agricultural program, which will make use of the farmers market, solve the food gap, and bring more health and well-being to the people in the inner city. And that is what, and have it a fair kind of, a fairer kind of distribution of taxes and income here, so that we invest in the people with jobs and our children and well-being. Bester should be having a community garden there. They're going to have a community gym. The city can advocate more for its kids in the neighborhood. The Winter Street is a community center. That should remain. That could remain a preschool parent or extended life learning center run by the schools. It should not the children should not be taken so far away from the community in which they live. We know that ties with family helps in education. So these are some things, and I was so excited when Urban Partners was coming in, and from Philadelphia, because Philadelphia is one known for their community gardens, revitalizing neighborhoods. They're known for their neighborhoods. They are known for their urban agriculture now. And I thought, and their farmers market, there's a famous market there. We all go to see it. We all go to the flower show, the art museum. I mean, Constitution Square. And yet, we have a proposal here for revitalizing the downtown as if the neighborhoods don't matter. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Janet. Anyone else who'd like to speak who did not sign up? Okay, and I believe we'll keep the record open for 10 days. And that way, if anyone has anything else they'd like to submit, you can certainly submit something to the city clerk for distribution, or you could contact us directly. And with that, I'll give opportunity for council members to make comments if they'd like. Mr. Brubaker?
Not this evening. We made comments earlier.
Sure.
I concur.
Me too.
All right. We will adjourn. Thank you.
Good job.